to admit something first. I have invited myself to come and speak here, so because I saw on social media and on the web what was going on last year, and my team and I have been working for about 18 months on a VR topic for employer branding, and I think that it's really cool, and I hope that it's also valuable for you. What I'm going to talk about today, in essence, is about data and people, or in other words, you can also say that I'm going to talk about relevance and connections, because data per se is kind of, for me at least, not so interesting, and individuals, are not as interesting as the connection between them. But everything we do really begins with data, and why? Oftentimes when people think of branding or of marketing, for people outside of that, it looks very fluffy, but for us it's actually quite specific. When I started the job about 3 years ago, of course I looked into what my company is doing in terms of the rankings. And earlier, I think Karim, you mentioned, and then there are Siemens in terms of hiring and so forth, and you mentioned other companies as well, but I remember you mentioned Siemens. Well, the thing has changed quite a bit in terms of the employer market. Companies like Siemens, we are not in a terrible position. We work with Universum for our rankings, and for example, in Germany, we are still number 6 in the rankings in terms of engineering. Globally, we are a strong 8th position in engineering and IT. However, over time, we see a certain movement that we don't like. It would be great if this was numbers for the global warming, but for us, this is not a good trend. Oh, sorry. And when and now I'm going to share something with you that I've only shared once before, but not to a group like you, externally. We've shared it internally. And so what we've done first, when we started, we developed our so-called employer value proposition. This is essentially what defines us as an employer. And for that, we listened. We had conversations with around 1,000 people internally and externally. And at the end of those focus group discussions and those interviews, we asked one question. We said, could you please describe Siemens as a person? What would this person look like? And now please take this with a pinch of salt. It's also supposed to be a bit exaggerated, but this is what external talent thinks of us. This is how we look. So you see that it's always German white male. It's a bit podgy, maybe not, an ultra-marathoner, but it's not all negative, you see. People also acknowledge that we have successes. You see the trophy. People acknowledge our globality. They acknowledge that we have real successes, that we're reliable, that we're trustworthy. But quite frankly, if you have a party going on Saturday, that's probably not the person you want to call, right? Now, let's see, what do our employees say about us? Yeah. Again, you have to see that we are kind of a hypercritical crowd, and if we don't have the latest VR technology already at our disposal for everybody, we're kind of, why don't we have that? We use old technology. But again, here it's also not all negative. We also acknowledge, and we're proud of our achievements. Right now, we have a project going on where we're doubling the energy production for Egypt, Siemens alone. This is huge, and this will make an amazing impact for people. And so these are things that we're quite proud of. But also, well. And then we also asked the management, and you see it's a little bit more dynamic, but it's kind of still, not as dynamic as I think it should be. It's still, you see the globality, you see the map, you see knowing the tools and kind of optimistic. But the problem with stereotypes is not necessarily that this isn't true. You will find people like that in the company, but I don't look like that. And many people in Siemens don't look like that, and they're also very, very different. So this diversity, this is something that I find we need to tell more, and we need to showcase more. And so if you contrast that with what's actually going on in the company, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be in Berlin at the Christopher Street Day for the 3rd time. And that's something that when we started doing this, it was very, very unusual. But we're there, and it opened up a lot of activities. In some countries, we have been doing a lot in terms of LGBT and diversity. But now, because of those activities, more and more of that is happening, and diversity is not just gender diversity. So that is important for us to show this breadth. In terms of the technology that we work on, Siemens has transformed a lot, and a lot of people, similar to the Osram story, don't really know what we're working on. And there are so many cool things going on. This is just one small example. It's the only spider I like. It's our spider bot. It's developed in Princeton. And what it is, it's a connected mobile 3D printer. So one alone may be like, oh, cute and interesting, but imagine you have 50 of them, you have 100 of them. Can you imagine which structures you're suddenly able to build at an incredible speed? This is, I find, cool. And of course, when you talk about purpose and what the company can deliver for society, I think that we have an amazing purpose. You know, out there you see all these nice headsets, gears, and so forth. The second the bar turns red and you run out of electricity, we all know the panic we have. And so I'm pretty happy to work for the company that gets you that kind of energy. You just need to find a socket. Right, and so the thing is that data and all these information, the facts that I'm telling you, they get us into the right area. But to really affect that change, you need to have that human connection, and that's what really I'm quite interested in. So people need to feel something if we want them to change how they view us. Remember the pictures I showed you. If I tell you, oh, we're at Christopher Street Day, we have the spider bots, blah, 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 it's interesting, but you probably, you don't feel that much. Your perception of the company may not change or may not change sustainably. So we also know that the most powerful way in finding out what it's like to work somewhere or what it's like to have an experience is to talk to someone who's already working there or who's done that. So this conversation is really, really powerful. And so we thought, what if we could do this at scale through technology? What if we could tell our story at scale? And it's, in essence, this is in this sentence very simple. This is the strategy for the employer brand at Siemens. Not much to it, if you want. We just want to show what it's really like to work at Siemens and empower our people to spark conversations about the future of engineering and what it takes to get there. Because anyone, starting from the intern to a data scientist, anyone is building the future, and we really believe that. How can we spark those conversations? How can we show that Siemens is not just this monolith, this big company that people often perceive, but there are actual people behind it. And there are people are pretty, many of my colleagues are pretty cool, I can assure you that. So we want to have conversations with the right people at the right time about topics they care about, and that driven through data and at scale. And when I talk about scale, of course, this is where the disadvantage that we sometimes have in the talent market, where people think, oh, you're just such a big company, I'm not interested anymore. And we know from the market data that today's millennials or the people coming into the labor market, they don't want to work for what they perceive as a big company. They'd rather work for startups like those represented here. When I talk at scale, is there anyone from Wuppertal here? Anyone? Not one? Oh. You know someone from Wuppertal? Oh, she knows someone from Wuppertal. I mentioned Wuppertal because it's in the area and because that's how big in terms of population Siemens is, the whole city. So when I talk about scale, I'm talking about 351,000 people. And this is something that we can turn into advantage when it comes to those conversations that we can spark and to reaching out to people to show what we stand for. And that's when VR comes in. So we chose VR because of its ability to transport people into another world. And therefore, we had 351,000 viewers, the Google Cardboards branded, and produced to distribute to all of our people. Because to you it might sound a bit strange, but there are people out there who haven't experienced VR yet. And for them it's an amazing opportunity, A, to experience this technology, but also to learn something about ourselves, to speak about it, to share with more people. That's a conversation starter. And so this technology really allows us to change completely the way that people think of Siemens, to share what it's like to work at the company. We developed, of course, an app, so it's already out there. We just haven't launched in Germany yet. It's Siemens 360. It's downloadable, and people can already experience it with a viewer. And so we produced really amazing VR documentaries. We've heard earlier, I think, Karim, it was you too, talking about how content is king. And we, in my team, we're not into the technology, but we're into the stories. We're creating content through the VR channel. And in those stories, you will hear about a colleague in India, in China, in the UK, US. We've just finished producing a story in Egypt, and Germany is about to be produced, where we talk not only about the Siemens technology, we really talk about the people and what interests them, what drives them. In one story in the UK, it's actually quite cool because you are in VR and you show, and we show how we use VR for our training, because that we do too, you know. But I'm interested here more in the storytelling aspect. So I've started at the beginning. I'm going to talk about data and people. And when it comes to data for the employer brand, there are two major data sets that we use. There is, of course, providers like Universum who give us the talent data. And then we have our internal employee survey. But they're just like annually or biannually, so it's not quickly enough. So we needed to come up with a data concept to measure how our activities, including VR, are doing, of course, on a global scale. So what we are doing is we want to measure the behavioral change that our initiatives have. This is one area where we really see if we have this smaller campaign, or if this activity, did the perception change? Are people more engaged in the team? Do maybe more people apply to the company? Remember, I'm always in the area of the employer brand, but you could use that for any other, that concept for any other industry or product that you're in. And then also, we measure how change happens, considering the success over time. Certain activities, we want to really react very, very fast. We want to be current. When it comes to posts on social media, we want to just change that really fast. We want to see how the tone of voice drives change. So we've developed a completely new way of speaking to people, because we want, in the past, we also thought we had to be kind of corporate and to come across as professional. And I think that's very wrong. You can be, as you know, very professional and still be approachable and have a human way of speaking. And then over time, you can also check which campaigns are working. And these are some examples, because I was, I think that the measurement part was also something that interested DIGILITY very much. These are some examples of measurement concepts that we've already implemented. Of course, we have our site performance dashboard to assess how this new conversational strategy is working in the market, including VR. Then the typical video statistics, but we can also measure how many of the viewers have been requested, how quickly do people turn off, and all of this. And then what we've also are doing right from the beginning is that we want to actually have a qualitative insight into how our VR experience is perceived. So we are doing exit surveys, which are very, very quick and easy to do. And of course, we measure all the social channels and all the social activations that we have, and we use a tool that does social listening. And this is really just listening into the market to make sure that what we do is that we stay current and relevant, and that we're not, having I don't want to name the company, but when some companies have this moments when they show that they have culturally that they're out of touch. So we have launched about 6 weeks ago in India and 2 weeks ago in China. So everything is really, really fresh. And so I don't have a very strong data set to share with you right now. But this is what I can share so far, and we have to take this with a pinch of salt because it's too fresh to really see if it's strong enough. But we distributed 21,000 of those cardboards. Then the people have to install the app, so we have over 15,000 installs. And the average app rating that we got so far with small numbers is 4.9. For us, we started this launch internally first, and we realized that focusing so much on content and focusing so much on storytelling and on telling stories that people care about, this is, I think, why we're having so much success with the numbers, because it's something that we rarely see, that incredible focus on people, at least in my context. So essentially, for VR, we have data as input. So we look into what have we learned from the Universum data, from our development of our EVP. What are the themes there? Through social listening, we make sure that we are relevant. And of course, we have engagement survey results and other results from internal that inform the type of stories we want to build in VR. And as you know, documentary style in VR is really in the making. So we're very proud that we're kind of at the forefront of developing a new genre. And with this method, we want to make sure that we really hit as close as we can to the center. But then, of course, you also have output data, where you can, like I described before, check, is it really clicking with the crowd, what you're doing? And so we look at film stats, exit surveys, the app usage, and the chat stats. And so this is really just the beginning of our journey with VR. It's the first time that we have used VR at that scale at Siemens. So from the employer brand, we have opened a completely new channel. I'm curious to see what we're going to do with it, how we're going to use VR to transport messages for communication, how we can interact with the market. Because the idea is, of course, that after we've launched it and positioned it internally, that we will share it externally as well, so that people can experience the company in a more immersive way and at their time. That is the goal. That's why everything there is no secret in here. We just don't want to launch things externally before we haven't launched it internally. We will start in Germany in September. And that's going to be pretty huge, because Germany is our largest market, where we have over 100,000 people. So we're preparing and gearing up for that, and I'm quite excited. So everything I do, if I want to leave you with a few things, we are guided by data and connected through conversation. That's really the core of what my team and I are working on. And with that, thank you very much.